There's a 5-course vegan restaurant in Seattle called Harvest Beat where everyone sits down at the same time each night for dinner and the chef comes out and talks about the ingredients and the dish they're about to serve to the dining room. However, one small problem there is it costs well over $100 to eat there. The time I went, they served a bisque that I thought was just out of this world for both taste and texture, and over some trial and error, I think I've made a pretty close recreation. So today, let's dive into how I make it and learn a couple key techniques along the way. The base of this soup is roasted golden carrots. My store didn't have only golden carrots, so I just picked the golden ones out of this bag of rainbow carrots. If you can't find any golden carrots, normal orange ones should be fine. They'll just be maybe slightly more earthy and a bit less sweet, but they'll totally work. Give them a rough chop and coat with a good bit of olive oil and a pinch of salt. Next, we'll lay them out onto some parchment paper on a tray and throw them into the oven to roast at 350 until bubbly and browned. Mine took roughly 30 to 40 minutes, but I'm also using a smaller toaster oven. Roughly dice 1 medium onion and some celery. I ended up using about 4 stalks of celery. Size doesn't matter much here as everything we're putting together will end up in the blender. Next, I chopped up some aromatics, which included a few cloves of garlic, a good knob of ginger, and 1 leek. If you don't typically have a leek on hand, you can definitely skip it, which I probably would if I were just making this on any given weeknight. You might just miss out on some of the sweeter, oniony flavor that they can provide. To prep the leek, first, we'll chop the roots off and remove a couple of the harder outer leaves. Cut the top off and give it a chop in rings down the stalk. Leeks trap the dirt they're grown in between their layers, so grab a bowl of water and rinse your chopped leek, which allows the dirt to sink in the water. Pull them out of the water and drain them. Make sure to clean the dirt off your cutting board too. So, with the aromatics chopped, a bit of learnings about them. The foundation of the flavor that we're using here in this soup is something that you may have used many times before, but may not know by name. It's called a mirepoix, which is just a flavor base made from carrots, onion, and celery that's cooked at a low temperature in fat with a goal to soften but not brown or caramelize the vegetables, just to make them aromatic. Mirepoix is a commune in southern France, and in the 18th century, the Duke of Mirepoix, or rather
Gaston Pierre Charles de Lévis-Lomagne, Duc de Mirepoix,
was honored with having this aromatic base named after him by his chef. I can't even find the name of the guy who actually made it, but it is easy to go down a French aristocracy rabbit hole when looking this stuff up. For instance, finding this quote that the Duke of Mirepoix was an incompetent individual that only had money because of how much Louis XV liked his wife, and that the only claim to fame was this soup base named after him. So anyways, back to the soup. So this mirepoix is a bit of an expansion past traditional. Typically, you would see a 2-1-1 ratio of 2 parts onion, 1 part celery, and 1 part carrot. We're going a bit heavy on the carrots since this is a carrot soup, and we're also roasting them. The addition of leeks is actually fairly common, and then we're adding garlic and ginger just to add to that aromatic flavor base. In a pot, add your onion and carrots with roughly 3 tablespoons of oil and start sweating them at a medium-low heat. When the onions are soft and translucent, add the garlic, leek, and ginger. Stir these around for another couple minutes until incorporated and aromatic. Next, I added a spice mixture of a 1/4 teaspoon black pepper, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of coriander, 1/4 teaspoon of allspice, and 1 teaspoon of sugar. Mix these around and let them bloom in the heat and fat a bit. I added a pinch of red pepper flakes and a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne, which ends up being a good heat level for me, but feel free to adjust to your taste. Here, I add 5 cups of veggie broth. Mine is roughly 3 tablespoons of better than bouillon vegetable base, whisked into some hot water. Once this is all up to a boil, we'll turn it down to a simmer and add another key ingredient, rice. From Julia Child's lobster bisque technique, a 1/4 cup of rice adds just enough starch to get a nice smooth and incredibly velvety emulsification of our vegetables. We'll simmer this until the rice is cooked, about 15 or 20 minutes. Next, with a good high-speed blender, we'll dump the contents of the soup in and turn it on to a low speed. If you have a cheaper blender, you might want to do this in batches, just might take a bit longer, but it'll totally work. Once things start to get mixed, I turn it up to a high speed and let it go for a few minutes. With the carrots getting pureed, it really starts to turn a nice golden color compared to the brown color of the veggie broth previously. After a taste, I added a bit more salt as well as the juice from a 1/2 lime. At this stage, it's important to get this into a homogeneous velvet texture, so if there are any flecks visible or grainy mouthfeel left, keep at it and blending until smooth. Lastly here, I added 1 can of coconut cream and blended until incorporated. There are many fancy ways you could garnish this soup. Some puffed rice or popped sorghum, fried garlic chips, vegan bacon, a few leaves of thyme or some microgreens. However, I opted to fry up some fresh fennel. To do this, I chopped the top and bottom off a bulb of fennel, then broke out the mandolin to get a nice even slice. If I were to fry up fennel again, I'd go just a bit thinner than I did here. In a hot pan, I added a quarter cup of avocado oil, and over medium-low heat, I stirred these around until nice and brown and caramelized. Toss with a pinch of salt and grab the crispiest looking pieces to top for your soup. I also zested the other half of the lime that I had left over for just a bit of color on the soup.
Overall, I just love this soup. The texture is unmatched thanks to the rice that we added, and the flavor is deep and rich and complex and super satisfying to eat. The best part about it, we didn't have to pay $100 to eat it. So, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy.